Alright, it's been a while since the last Why Everyone Plays, mostly because I know Why No One Plays is more popular given that most people already know why everyone plays a certain champion, but I still want to keep up the sister series to some degree, so hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why Everyone Plays. It's a series where I talk about champions in League of Legends that often see high pick rates in the professional scene and or solo queue, especially over the span of the past few years. And for today, let's talk about Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver. He's a consistently strong jungler for the latter half of the past decade. I believe this is also the first full-on assassin we're going to be covering out of the 25 somewhat champions that I've talked about in both series combined. If this is your first time joining me, then welcome, glad to have you here and I hope you enjoyed watching. If you still have time after finishing this episode, I recommend you check out my previous Why Everyone Plays. Also, I have a sister series to this called Why No One Plays, which as the name implies covers champions with very low pick rates and breaks down possible reasons as to why they may not be a common choice for many players. But when you think of the champions I covered in Why Everyone Plays so far, Yasuo, Darius, Lee Sin, and Ezreal, many players have a general idea as to the reason behind their popularity. The responses usually boil down to being either really strong, really fun to play, or really flashy. I will touch on those aspects, but the goal of this series is also to discuss the not so conspicuous factors to their high play rate, because being mechanically intensive doesn't always translate to popularity. So if you enjoy these types of videos, after you're done watching, a rating would be much appreciated, and comment down below your own thoughts on Kha'Zix if you have any, but for now, let's just begin. Assassins are an integral source of excitement for some players and a source of major frustration for others. Traditional gameplay conventions depict assassins as very fast or stealthy individuals who either dish out damage extremely quickly or in ways that are difficult to see coming. League of Legends upholds this tradition in all ways that you would expect. Just about every assassin we know of in League hits hard and fast. They have no shortage of mobility and have little issue dispatching priority targets, namely mages and marksmen. Most of them also have some built-in defensive tool or escape that gives them a window of opportunity, albeit a very small one, to also leave the fight with their lives intact. Because they put so much of their focus into damage and mobility, it naturally leaves out every other champion virtue, such as no utility, defense, or crowd control. And those who do have things like crowd control is usually focused on a single target. This stipulation means that your only way to ward off incoming threats is to use your superior mobility to dodge skill shots, outrun pursuers, or to just kill the enemy faster than they can kill you. And so high risk, high reward playstyles draw a big crowd in just about every game. Most people think it's just because it's fun one-shotting people. That is true, but I think what really makes Assassins fun is not about executing key targets, it's being able to get away with it. And out of most of the assassins in the game, no one does it more unpredictably than Kha'Zix. For those of you who watched my videos before, you'll know that I often talk about the two most important elements to a popular champion: consistency and adaptability. Every champion in Why No One Plays suffers from a lack of one of those factors or both. Now when it comes to consistency, just about every assassin passes with a good mark. In order for them to be good at their job, they have to be fully self-sufficient, and since they don't have to rely on any external forces, consistency is not really much of an issue. Where some of them start to taper off though is adaptability. Assassins are almost purely offensive, and usually that offense can be one-dimensional. If the enemy team knows how to respond to an assassin's linear rules of engagement, that can be enough to shut them down. For example, let's look at Kha'Zix's rival Rengar. It's safe to say that the latter eclipses the former when it comes to full-on burst damage. Make no mistake, Kha'Zix can still dish out a lot of hurt. However, if we talk about just sheer numbers and short time frames, Rengar is far better. But in most situations, the risk of playing Rengar is that his mobility only really works when used as a means of attack, not as a means of retreat. Aside from maybe Echo, Kha'Zix is arguably the safest and most flexible assassin in the game. Ordinarily, you would have to sacrifice a great deal of damage to gain that flexibility, but that isn't the case with this guy. The most obvious trait to show this is his unique leveling mechanic, Evolution. Every time he levels his ultimate, Kha'Zix can choose to also evolve any one of his 4 abilities, which I'll get into right now. Starting with his passive, Unseen Threat, it's a pretty rudimentary passive, but one that helps give him that extra bit of damage he needs to snipe out key targets. Whenever he exits an enemy champion's field of vision, his next basic attack does bonus damage and slows the first champion hit. Given that Kha'Zix is a jungler, it is pretty easy for him to acquire Unseen Threat because it reactivates even if the enemy loses sight of him for just a short moment, such as going into a brush and coming back out. The bonus damage from his passive is no joke. In fact, it has comparable scaling to Rengar's base Q Savagery. Utilizing Kha'Zix's Unseen Threat several times in a fight is usually what separates the good and bad players, since people who pick him up for the first time, they rarely pay attention to the bonus damage from his passive. Taste Their Fear is a targeted damaging ability that more than doubles against isolated targets, or in other words, his Q hurts like a truck whenever attacking someone who's all alone, the perfect kind of target for an assassin. Evolving Taste of Fear gives him bonus attack range and refreshes close to half the cooldown, pretty much making his Q extremely spammable at higher CDR, especially given the low mana cost, and can greatly enhance his already high DPS because the second Q will be coming very soon if the target somehow managed to survive the first one. As for Void Spike, it shoots a projectile that deals a decent amount of damage and heals him if he uses it in melee range. This isn't the most dangerous ability in the game at base, and it's really only there to snipe targets who are able to escape with a sliver of health, or just to keep up his sustain since in the jungle, Kha'Zix doesn't have the best clearing speed early on. What really makes this attack broken is when he evolves it. Spike Rax increases the number of projectiles to 3, making it way more effective in picking out multiple targets. Additionally, the spikes slow for 60% for 2 seconds, increased to 90% on isolated targets. Evolving Kha'Zix's Q turns it into a very powerful skill shot that can be used both offensively and defensively, since he can use it to chase down fleeing enemies or to slow down pursuers if he's trying to escape. Moreover, it also grants vision of the target, which means you can use it to avoid face checking. Leap is his most basic ability. It's basically a free targeted jump that does damage. Evolving it though allows him to jump a farther distance, and every time he gets a kill or assist, the cooldown resets. Chances are you've probably seen a Kha'Zix montage here or there where it looked like he was Mario jumping several times over. It's really similar to Tristana's rocket jump in that regard, but a lot faster. Because Leap is a free targeting dash, it can be used as both a gap closer and an escape. A lot of assassins don't have this privilege because their dashes are usually targeted, such as Diana's Lunar Rush, Rengar's Unseen Predator, his passive, Pantheon's Shield Vault, so on and so forth, and usually, champions who do have flexible mobility will end up having to burn a major source of damage to do so, like Zed's Shadow, Viz's Playful Trickster, and Akali's Perfect Execution. Since most of Kha'Zix's damage is tied to his passive and Q, he can still deal significant burst damage if the enemy catches up to him when he's running away, or vice versa if he's trying to catch up to someone. Finally, Void Assault gives him combat invisibility and bonus movement speed. It may not look like much at first, but this ability is criminally underrated. Void Assault giving on-demand stealth means Kha'Zix can reactivate Unseen Predator. The bonus movement speed can help him catch up to fleeing enemies, or he can do some really insane jukes and fake outs if he's caught in a bad spot. The total invisibility you get is 2.5 seconds at base, but if you evolve it to Adaptive Cloaking, you can cast it 3 times, 2 seconds each, for a total of 6 seconds. That's a lot of time to be invisible for, especially in combat. Now, true to his design in terms of his champion lore, Kha'Zix can adapt to a number of situations that most assassins simply cannot. If the enemy team has a lot of immobile squishies, you can evolve Q and E to quickly bounce from one target to another and just burst down everyone. If the game's going south and you need a little more protection, you can take Evolve Spike Rax and Void Assault for better utility and safety. Those are just 2 examples to name a few, but being able to shift gears in the middle of a game is a valuable privilege to have, and he doesn't fall behind in damage relative to his peers. Sure, he won't be doing nearly as much destruction on a single target in a shorter time frame the way someone like Talon, Rengar, or Fizz can, but he still does more than enough to make the enemy AD carry worthless. It's often why Kha'Zix is usually the highest pick rate assassin in the game, because his non-committal nature makes him very safe to play, even against unideal matchups. If you jump in to go after an enemy champion but realize it's not looking that great, you can still use your ultimate to get to safety. The second reason players love Kha'Zix so much is that he has a surprisingly high uptime in combat. A common issue assassins face is that they tend to do relatively poorly against champions specialized in 1v1s, such as Jax, Fiora, Master Yi, Tryndamere, Camille, so on and so forth, because those champions specialize in single combat while also having enough durability or protection to mitigate your damage. Bruisers like Garen, Darius, Yorick, Alawi, and Kled are a sore spot as well, because the only way you can reliably beat them before they bludgeon you down is if you're massively fed, at which point it doesn't matter who you're up against, you're just going to one-shot everybody. Kha'Zix doesn't have this issue, at least not to the same extent. The best way to counter a lot of assassins is to exploit their cooldowns. If they fail to dispatch a target with their initial burst, assassins are usually vulnerable for about a 2 to 6 second window. Kha'Zix on the other hand has surprisingly high sustained damage, mostly in part to his passive and Q. Unseen Threat is for all intents and purposes a Sheen proc, and Taste Their Fear does huge damage against isolated targets. It has a base damage of over 300 with a bonus AD ratio of almost 275%. By mid to late game, a single isolated Q can do well over 600 to 800 damage, and he can use it every 4 seconds assuming he's got no cooldown reduction or haste. This becomes even shorter if he evolves his Q. Additionally, Void Assault can also help him stall out fights. Basic attacks contribute most of the DPS for a lot of champions, and they usually have a buff or ability that helps them survive fights long enough to win. Couple examples are Tryndamere's ultimate, Jax's ultimate, Fiora's ultimate, Garen's W shield, Alawi's ultimate, things like that. With Void Assault, you can prevent them from easily attacking you while you wait for those abilities to wear off. This isn't a luxury other assassins have. They have to kill their target and run away quickly before they draw too much attention to themselves. Now there are certain assassins that can sort of kite out targets if they're slow enough, such as LeBlanc, since she can play cat and mouse with bruisers like Garen and Darius who can't really catch up to her, but again, if she uses distortion to dodge abilities or to run away, she's losing a major source of damage in her kit. Kassadin is probably another one, but I mean he's Kassadin, he beats everyone once he gets level 16 anyway. 90% of Kha'Zix's damage is in only 2 abilities, meaning he can save his W, E, and ultimate for defense or self-peel. This makes him probably the only assassin in the game who can actually take on fighters and bruisers, once again making him a very flexible assassin. He doesn't have to exit a teamfight and wait for his cooldowns either, since again, Void Assault does buy him time and allows him to reposition during all of that chaos. Overall, what makes Kha'Zix one of, if not the most popular assassin in the game is that he's extremely consistent and adaptable without sacrificing efficiency. He doesn't have a one-note playstyle like most assassins do. He can either go full burst or play guerrilla warfare and mix up his approach. And in spite of all the safety nets built into his kit, he still deals monstrous amounts of damage. Now mind you, he isn't without weaknesses of course. He shares the same deficiencies as the rest of his cadres, such as very little crowd control, tanks, and teams with lots of disengage, but even when faced with those difficulties, he can still contribute very well if played correctly, since he can double up as a bruiser with a really annoying poke in the form of spike racks. I think I covered everything I want to say about the guy. Let me know your own thoughts on Kha'Zix in the comments section if you have any. Most assassins are very mechanical in nature, but I personally believe Kha'Zix does better if you have really good understanding of macro, such as knowing your windows of attack, when to engage in a teamfight, things like that. A good Kha'Zix player definitely needs a fundamental understanding of League of Legends to be played most effectively, since he doesn't have that same YOLO one-shot capability the way someone like Rengar or Talon does. In fact, it'll probably take you hundreds of games just to master using his ultimate, let alone the rest of his kit. Thanks to everyone who made it to the end of the video, hope you enjoyed it. Once again, if you would like to support my channel, best way you can do so is by liking the video, leaving a comment down below, sharing the video with your friends, watching my older videos, and lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Twitch. Check out my Twitter and Discord server and consider donating to my Patreon. I would appreciate it very much. But for now, thank you all so much for watching and I hope to see you again soon for the next video. Take care.